Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Daryl.
Hi there.
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Beautiful day out there.
Yeah, Labor Day.
Yeah.
So
Day of labor.
right. This is Suburban Rebels broadcast with Daryl Hooper, the last member of the legendary and pioneering band The Seeds. So, what was Los Angeles like in the 60s?
What was Los Angeles like in the 60s? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it was a lot better than it is nowadays. Of course, I feel that way about most of the world, but that's me, an old guy here. But there's been just so many changes. Like Hollywood back in the day was a fun place to be, and the music was great, and, bands we'd go see, Buffalo Springfield or something up on Sunset Strip or the Byrds, and they would come down and see us where we were playing. We'd played a long time at a little inn club type situation called Beatolitos. They'd come down and see us. We'd go up and see them. And all different groups would kind of do that in the days and hang out together. And just the whole outlook of everything. Nowadays, I haven't been there for a little while, but last time I was down, I just don't even recognize much of anything. It's just a whole different place.
Yeah. And you grew up in Michigan, right?
I grew up in Michigan, yeah. I came out right out of high school. Rick Andridge, myself, he was the drummer of the group, and we met up with Sky and Jan out here, and the group happened, yeah.
Yeah, and Sky was from Utah, so it seems like you guys were all from somewhere else.
Yeah, I believe Jan was from Arizona or somewhere at the time, grew up different place too, but then ended up in California. And yeah. So we
do you
all
think
met
Los Angeles influenced your sound and music?
That's a little bit tough to say. I mean, as far as influences go, I think we had a real different, distinct sound. If you look back at the time frame, we were one of the very first groups to come out with an album of all our own material, recorded and stuff. Even the Rolling Stones or the Beatles were still doing a couple cover songs on an album if you look way back. And we didn't, I think, copy anybody. You're obviously influenced by music, and I grew up, I was a big fan of Jerry Lee Lewis, and that shows in some of my playing, but I was also a classically trained musician, so I think a little bit of that shows up in my rock, and, so things like that. But to say just Los Angeles influenced me or the group, I don't necessarily think so.
Okay, yeah. And how did you start playing the organ piano?
Well, as a kid, I grew up, I started taking piano lessons when I was about 8 years old. And then by the time I got into junior high school, we put together a little band that we'd play at somebody's party or something. And by high school, we were playing on the weekends in some afternoon bar thing or something like that. And when it came to California, both Rick and I weren't necessarily come out to be musicians and stuff. It just kind of happened. And we were real low on money, and Sky Saxon called me on the phone, got my number somehow, don't even know how that happened, and needed a keyboard player, and I said, can you use a drummer too, and wanted to just play this gig in Santa Monica. And we did, and it just kicked it off by the end of the evening. We just got together and said, well, what songs do you know? What songs do you know? And we played the gig, and it all came off great. And everybody loved it, and the bar guy wanted us back. And so, said, do you want to do this for a bit, see how it goes? And it did go, obviously. And we started writing our own material and, doing bigger and bigger gigs. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, very cool. What kind of organ and piano do you play usually?
Well, back in the day, I had a Farfisa organ and a Wurlitzer electronic piano.
Cool.
But nowadays, I don't. They're problematic. You know, a lot of little instruments you can make, they sound great, but if you try traveling around with them or something, back in the day, they were every other show. Myself or somebody was trying to fix them. You know.
Yeah.
They're like an old car. They're fun to have, but you got to tinker with them all the time.
Yeah. So, and the Seeds, you guys came about. You started off doing covers, right, in the bar, you said.
Yeah. I think every band did, you know.
Yeah, and then so you guys just auditioned for Sky, or like how was the band born, like ultimately?
No, we never auditioned. He just called us on the phone. He needed some players. We met up at the gig, said, "What songs do you know? What songs do you know?" About an hour before the gig, went on stage and played.
Yeah.
And it went from there, seriously. And just,
wow.
You know, but we were musicians, and we weren't just amateurs. You know, we were, you know, we knew our stuff. And we just, as long as you knew the words to that song, and yeah, I know the music to that song, let's do it, you know. And then, of course, that it grew and into writing our own music and everything. But,
yeah. And the band name came from like being seedy, right? Like, you look a little seedy, dangerous, or.
Well,
fun.
actually, it was named by a DJ in LA, and I shouldn't be quoted on this one. I thought it was the real Don Steele, but it may have been another one. But it was a big disc jockey in LA. Things are so long ago for me. Sometimes Alec Palau is the bass player in my group, and I call him a historian, and he can tell you anything at all you want to know about rock and roll, whether it be the Seeds or anybody. And so he would know that one. But long story short, he come to see us at some gig. We had different names as we were going along. It seemed like every other week we had a new name, you know. And he came and he said, "You should call yourself the Seeds." And at first we went, what? You know, thinking, it was kind of like we were kind of seedy and grungy and whatever. And no, that wasn't it at all. He says, no, your music's so earthy and has a real different feel to it, and I think Seeds are like a growing thing, you know. And so he's, you know, we thought about it for about a week and went, yeah, that works. And then that was it.
Oh, cool. What were those early Seeds shows like?
Well, are we going to go back to the really early ones where you're still doing covers? Is that what you mean, or you want to come up a little bit?
Yeah, when you guys did original, you know.
Started being, okay, yeah, one night we were playing at like I mentioned, club called Dito Lido's in Hollywood, and it was literally an underground club. And you walk down a flight of stairs or something off the main sidewalk in Hollywood, and then you were down in this underground club. And we played it for quite a while, and we got quite a following. And we started at first, we still had covers, but we had started writing our own material. And Sky, during a break or something, we'd have a little 15-minute break or something, and he'd come up with an idea and start scratching out some words on a napkin or something, you know, or we'd do this at breakfast or something too. And he'd come up with an idea and write stuff down on a song, and then I said, "Okay, Sky, come on over here, just real quietly in the corner before we go back on stage. You know, let me hear a couple of words." And I'd play a few chords, and we'd monkey around with it for a little bit or something. And since it was a kind of a real casual place, you know, and whatever else, and everybody knew us, they were kind of excited to hear what might grow out of that. So a lot of times we would just start playing, say, "Hey, this is a new idea for a song, and we're going to hit you with it and see what you think and see how it develops," and have it developed right then and there. And that was kind of fun. And I'm not saying we did that all the time, but that happened numerous times. I will say that. And it was a fun and thing to do. And of course, as like all musicians back in that era, we were experimenting with new sounds, new, like when distortion first came out, we literally were at the beginning stages of that, where you actually took an old small amplifier and took a razor blade to the speaker. And then you'd run that amplifier, you'd plug your instrument into that, usually the guitar, and then run that into a regular amp. But that would make the distortion sound. That was the first type of, we call them fuzz tones, but then they're just distortion nowadays, and they're all done electronically. But it was always stuff like that, and we would experiment with new sounds. It was always fun to do and creative, and you felt good.
Yeah, well, you guys definitely paved the way, for all that. So when you dropped off records to Wolfman Jack, right? That's how you got airplay?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and he started playing it, and then a couple of times we went down to see him, in the middle of the night he was on or something. And great guy, really, really great guy.
Yeah,
he really liked our music, and he played it, and that's how we got, I think, our first airplay. And then the exciting one was, and we'd come out with "Can't Seem to Make You Mine" was our actual first record, and it got a little bit of airplay, but it didn't do a lot. And then the second record was "Pushing Too Hard," and it was a little bit slow getting going and stuff, and Wolfman would play it, and it was starting to get a little bit of popularity. And then we went on a tour with Buffalo Springfield and a bunch of other groups, and bus tour, and went all the way back east and stuff, and through Maine and Massachusetts and all back in there. And we're on this bus and listening to the radio station, and all of a sudden here comes "Pushing Too Hard" on the radio, and it says this is number 20 on the charts. It hit at this, and it's already climbing, and of course we were really excited. And by the time we got back to Los Angeles, in Los Angeles itself, we had a number one record.
Wow.
And that was really exciting. And of course, it didn't hit number one nationwide charts, but it did in the Los Angeles area. It did, and we were like the number one group there for a little bit.
Yeah, people were listening to you guys more than like the Stones, right? And like the Who.
Yeah. At one point, yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, we've had some different write-ups through the years. We did a blues album with Muddy Waters, and on the back of the album, he wrote a little paragraph and stuff, and he called us the American Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was quite a little honor and stuff, and yeah. So.
I also heard you guys were the Beatles of the USA.
Yeah, that was written up about us too, called the American Beatles. And we
good.
actually our second album, A Web of Sound, Dick Clark nationwide top 10 hits.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is not like you can pull up the record charts and stuff, but this Dick Clark had his own column, and I have a copy of it. And our Web of Sound album was number one, and Revolver, the Beatles, was number 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've got that on my wall. I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, you got to have that framed.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, did you tour at all? Like, did you ever go to London or like?
We didn't get out of the country. We toured Canada, all the way across Canada. We later on, when we were really starting to hit big, we did Hawaii, to an amazing show over there where we got off the plane and we were like the Beatles to them, screaming teenagers, and we stopped off in the limousine to the radio station to make the big interview and the whole thing. Very, very exciting. And that's when we were right at the peak of our career and stuff. But we also had we did quite a few tours and stuff with a lot of the different. We probably played with everybody. Played with Jimi Hendrix, with split billing in New York City and Greenwich Village for 2 weeks there, and And
How was Jimi Hendrix?
He was an amazing guitar player, but he did too many drugs, to be honest with you. You couldn't have a conversation with him. He was always spaced out. He was always on LSD, and he would be staring off and go, "Wow, man, look at the colors, look at that." Look, you couldn't really have a conversation with him. He was friendly, and but he was usually always stoned. But he could still play that guitar. There's no question about it. He was amazing.
So he kind of just stood off in the corner most of the time, then, huh?
Yeah, he was kind of floating around the room, or he'd go outside and, whatever, if he wasn't playing. Yeah, and it was so funny. He was so loud. He had stacks of Marshalls, and he was so loud. We were loud. We were always on 10, like most groups were, or something. I don't know if you ever see the movie The Spinal Tap?
Yes, yeah.
Where they have the amplifier that goes to 11. Yeah. Well, I don't know if the numbers were on it, but by the time Jimmy put a bunch of Marshalls together, he was more than 11. And it was again an underground club, and we had to walk up and listen to him out on the sidewalk because it was so loud down there that we couldn't even take it as musicians.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did you guys?
That's why all the old rock and rollers are half deaf.
Yeah. Did you guys ever pop LSD before going on stage?
No, I never took the stuff in my life. Sky Saxon did. That was, to me, one of his downfalls. And I just see how too many people getting screwed up on it and causing very detrimental things to them. Yeah. I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah. And I heard that some of your shows, I don't know if it's true, that girls would literally like rip their clothes off and stuff.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So there was like a lot of like groupies and stuff, huh?
Yeah, there really was. Yep.
Yeah. What do you think the Wildest Seed show was?
The Wildest Seed show. Well, there's a toss-up. There's a couple of them. One would have been Hawaii, where we had a huge auditorium, dome thing, and this stage that they had a couple cops or whatever right up the stage was one of the high stage, like, I don't know, 10, 12 feet off the ground type thing. And then we had cops in front of the stage, and the place was just packed. And they, of course, being Hawaii, they're throwing leis and stuff. And that was right about the era when we were involved with flower power and stuff. And Sky was the one that created that, by the way. And he was throwing flowers, and they were throwing leis, and a lei or something hit a cop and went around the guy's neck. And this whole pile of girls jumped the cop, and that's the last we saw of him.
Oh, man.
It was a wild show where it was just, lots of screaming and lots of flowers being thrown all over the place. But it was a peace and love thing. There was no fights or bad anything, it was great. It was just exciting, Yeah. And the other one is super memorable is the Hollywood Bowl of 18,000 people. Oh. And some girl from the audience at that time there was a pool in front of the stage. A water thing, not a swimming pool, but a shallow ornamental pool, fairly large. And that was between the stage and the audience back in the day. And she jumped in the pool and ran up onto the stage and grabbed Sky, and they had to come out and take her away. And so again, very exciting, and playing for, large groups like that. It was a sold out 18,000 people. Yeah. And you look out into that sea of people, and of course it was a nighttime show, and all you see is just cigarette lighters and little lights and stuff flying around and whatever. You can't really see people's faces and stuff. So it was quite an experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys ever have any trouble from the police?
Yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't say terribly, but hassling or, back in the day, they would try to, they'd try to bust you if you had one marijuana seed in your car or something that happened, So they'd stop you, pull you over, and search the car and stuff like that. But
Yeah, because I know Rocky Erickson had some problems.
Oh, I know he had some bad problems. Yeah. Luckily, none of us ever were arrested for anything or had gotten any real trouble, but we were hassled, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think everybody was back then.
And you guys had a pretty, crazy look for back then, right? Like the long hair and just your outfits and stuff. So that probably didn't help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What about when Sky moved into that Malibu house? Do you have any stories from that place?
Not really too many. It was, you'd gotten a lot of stories from Sky. Didn't hang out a lot socially with Sky. I mean, we were friends. We wrote music together. We practiced and stuff like that. And we would usually practice out at his place in Malibu in his garage. And I will wonder if that's somewhere where the word garage band came from. I'm not real sure, but we did do that. But then he was the one that we weren't home. And by that time, we were also married. And so we would go home after that, and Sky would have some wild party or whatever. But we usually weren't involved in that.
Okay.
Because that was later on in the career and stuff.
Right. Do you think the band ever had any, like, weird, like, evil, like, hoodoo vibes or anything like that? Any... kind of like occult stuff, like any
No,
nothing like that. It was mostly positive, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and most of the songs what were they about? Like personal relationships, or?
There was a lot of things. It's just like pushing too hard itself. For instance, it has if you listen to the words and whatever and the whole thing, you can make up a lot of different things. I mean, the Vietnam War was going on, so people would say, it was about that the government's pushing too hard. It could have been that, it could have been a lot of different things. The truth of the matter was, Sky wrote it about a girlfriend that was pressuring him too much, so she was pushing too hard, and so.
Yeah.
But in a lot of the songs were most of the songs were positive, and peace and love, or a story about a relationship, or this or that. I think most music was a lot happier back then.
Yeah, that's true. And you guys were on a TV show, right?
TV show? Many.
Oh wow! And how did that come about? How did you guys just living in Hollywood or in LA?
Well, as we've gained popularity, although early on we were on a local, one of the dance shows. I forget which one it was, and early on, and then as we got popularity and starting to have hit records, then you're actually approached, and of course we have management by this time, so management's being approached, or they're fishing and looking for, television shows. So we did American Bandstand a number of times. We did Casey Kasem. We did a show with Paul Revere and the Raiders that was on all the time, and we would go out to Palm Springs and film that out on the desert, or down in Santa Monica and somewhat on the beach. And it was always fun stuff to do. It was always really fun.
Yeah.
And all through the country, you might go into a town, maybe into Chicago or something, and they'd set up a TV show for you or something, and you'd perform your record or whatever if you wanted at the time. And when we did, if you're familiar with the Mothers-in-Law TV show that we did, it was a situation comedy way back when, Desi Arnaz production of Desi and Lucy, of course. And that was a lot of fun to do. That was a situation comedy, and they called us the Warts for the show, and the premise of the show was we were supposed to be it was two families involved that made up the Mothers-in-Law show, and this particular show with us, we were a band that their two kids were college students had found, and they wanted us to play for some dance or something. And then we end up going over to their house and auditioning, and of course that's us on screen playing Pushing Too Hard and doing whatever else. It was a lot of fun. Desi Arnaz was an amazing guy to work with. Very, very down, to the job, get this done type thing. But everybody respected him and all the other actors stuff, and he was an amazing person. And all the actors, Kay Ballard, Eve Arden, she was amazing. They would do a 3-day shoot to do a live half-hour show. And the 3 days, the first day you would go in and you'd sit around a table with the script. We didn't have a lot to say, but we had a few words here and there in the show. And but we were involved with everything, and all the actors would read their part and whatever else. The second day, you're put on different spots on the actual stage, and this is your mark. You're going to be here. You're going to be there. You do this. You do that. And they're still reading the scripts, but Eve Arden's already thrown hers away. She knew everything, And then the third day is the live performance, and they've got a live audience of maybe 100 people or something like that, and so you get the crowd noise and this and that. And really, really a fun thing to do,
Very cool.
We did a movie called Psych Out with what's the people now?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you have to look it up or something, but famous actors for sure.
Oh, cool.
It's been quite a ride, and we're still playing. Now and then. I'd like to play. If you got some gigs in mind, people call me. But we like to do larger shows. The band is spread out all around California, so it's not easy to just put everybody together. You can't go play the corner gig. It needs to be, we did a wonderful gig here not too many months ago in Glendale, and it was a theater called the Alex Theater, and it was a Nuggets show. I don't know if you're familiar at all with the Nuggets.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, all right. So then Lenny Kaye put all this stuff together and flew me down to do the show, and I had 13 musicians playing Pushing Too Hard with me. It was quite fun.
Wow.
And we had a sellout show of 14,000 people. So in the most beautiful theater I've ever been in my career.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was just not too long ago here. So I love doing stuff like that. So it would be last year we did a great show in Kansas City, Missouri, and we popping around, still here and still doing the group with Paul Koff and Alec Palau, and we got Mark, our guitar player, and the whole group is a really tight to group. It brings all the essence of the 60s together, and in a way it's even better than the original group, but yet it holds all that stuff, and we do all the original material and plus a few new songs that we've written. So
very cool. That's awesome. You got to keep it going.
Yeah.
And what what about the LA psychedelic, were there hangouts for the psych mod scene back then?
Yeah, well, it was more, I guess sometimes, it depends on how you look at that. There's certain clubs that were more hangouts than others. The Whiskey A Go-Go, of course, was really popular in its day, and I guess still is, but it was a whole different scene. And as far as saying any particular place, and psychedelic was more of a happening and something that was kind of part of the whole culture. It reflected in the dress, it reflected in the the movies. It reflected in the music. It was a whole happening thing.
Right. Yeah. What about the song "The Wind Blows Your Hair"? What inspired that tune?
That was one of the few that I think that's a collaboration with Sky and Bigelow. These are you would do well to interview Alec a little bit too, and you'd get some more insight to any of these questions. Like I say, he's an amazing historian. You got to remember how many years ago this was. So some of this stuff I've kind of foggy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well,
but
yeah.
it was something that they developed. I wrote my part to it or something, and basically, I don't remember a lot about how it came about because I wasn't involved in that part.
Oh, okay. What was it like being in a band with Sky Saxon?
Well, that's a big question. How many weeks you got? Sky was a great guy. He would give you the shirt off his back. Very talented person. He definitely could write songs. Definitely a character and definitely cut from a different mold. It was very too bad. I think he got so wrapped up in drugs. I think it really affected his life, and he anything that was kind of more on the edge of being not so fun to be around, that drug thing would take it further. So, he might become, he never was violent, but he could become very argumentative. And later on, he just wasn't that fun to be around. So it became more of a professional thing. We'll get together, we'll do our job, we'll do this, we'll do that, and then see you later, Sky. Because he got crazier and crazier and crazier. And I believe it was the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. What's like the wildest thing you saw him do? Well, would you say you're the innovator of psychedelic garage?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you guys are even pioneers of punk rock.
Yeah. No, I would say we were, and back then, of course, those terms weren't used. We were just playing rock and roll, but whatever tag you want to put on it, and I can see how it got that and whatever. But yeah, I think our music was the beginning stages of what turned into punk, or what turned into what nowadays are called garage music. I guess we were that then, type thing. But, yeah. It was all fun. It was a heck of an era and been quite a ride. And I feel very lucky to have it still living, and I appreciate all the fans that still enjoy the music. And it's very rewarding when I go do a show and I have all these fans come up to me and, know me enough to ask questions and want an autograph and stuff. And here it is this many years later, and if I go way back in my mind at the time of what's all happening, you really didn't think this was all going to last till you were, later in life, for God's sake.
Well, it's well deserved.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to made the trip, and I'm glad there's all those fans still out there. It's really wonderful to see.
Yeah. Is it true that the doors open for you guys on some shows?
Oh yeah. We worked up and down the coast of California and Oregon, of every college along the coastal route, and they were our opening act.
Wow. So how was it playing with the Doors and Morrison?
I didn't pay too much attention to them. They were just the opening act.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And later on, Morrison did a lot of time sitting out in front and learning from Sky different moves and different things. There was another person, I think, a talented person. They wrote some great music, very good musicians. I got along with the band fine. Morrison was very hard to get along with, very egotistical and very too much into drugs and alcohol. He'd get so placid, he'd forget the words to a song halfway through, or even more than that, and fall off the stage. And, he was just hard to deal with.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And you were, since you were, around in LA in the '60s, did you ever have any run-ins or meet Charles Manson?
No. Although close friend did.
Yeah.
He knew
the Beach Boys. Right.
We played with the Beach Boys a number of times. We were their opening act. We did car shows with them early on.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. We played with Sonny and Cher on a couple big tours. They were really fun and amazing people, Sonny especially. Sonny Bono was a really fun guy to be around. Really down-to-earth, smart, intelligent. You could just sit around and have a conversation about cars or anything, He didn't have a big ego. Cher at the time, which is going to be hard for anybody to put their head around, but back in that era, and she was an amazing singer. She was great, and she was wonderful. I have nothing derogatory to say about her at all, but I will say she was very shy. Can you imagine Cher being shy? No, she would be polite. She'd say, "Hi, nice to meet you. See you later," and she'd be off to the dressing room. And she didn't do it because she had a big ego or anything, but it was just she was very shy. But Sonny would hang around with you, and we'd just talk and do whatever else. I was in a couple tours with them, and that was fun. Yeah.
Cool. And how do you come up with music for your songs? Like I know you said once you woke up at 3 a.m. and you had like the chords in your head, but like what inspires you like to hear musically?
Well, I think that changes from song to song. You might be somewhere and see something or be involved in something, and that might inspire you to have an idea. My part's a little different because I'm the music writer. I don't write lyrics.
Right.
So, like I did write Mr. Farmer. I wrote all the music to Mr. Farmer, and I woke up early in the morning or whatever, and the tune da 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 was going through my head. I don't know why. It just was. And I actually got up because it inspired me to get up and follow through with it and go sit down at the piano and figure it out and write it out. And I did that. And then I went to Sky and I said, check this out. How about putting some words to it? And he did. And that's how that came about. But you see, so being inspired, I don't know why that tune popped into my head. And, Strawberry Alarm Clock's done it. And they did a great video of Mr. Farmer. I love it. They're flying around on a magic carpet and doing all this stuff. If you get a chance, go to YouTube and check out Strawberry Alarm Clock doing Mr. Farmer. It's a really fun one. But I wrote that song. So,
is it true that it's about growing weed or?
Well, you could take it that way, and it got banned in certain cities, like up in Montana or something way back in the day. They banned it off the radio because they thought the farmer was growing pot. But listen to the words. You could be growing anything. You could be growing tomatoes.
Right.
So it's just like pushing too hard. It can take on a lot of different connotations, and it's what you want to make out of it type thing.
Right. Did you know what Up in Her Room was about?
Again, Sky wrote all the lyrics. It was kind of a big jam song, and we would end with that a lot of times, and we do end with it usually now, as the new seeds do. And it's always a crowd getter. And it's a song that, even though it's really great on recording live, whether it was the old seeds or the seeds of today, people love it, and it builds interest. And the more the crowd gets excited, the more the band gets into it, and it's a real climax or a song. And it's about Sky wrote the words again, so I can't say exactly, but listening to the lyrics, obviously you're having a good time with a lady, so.
Yeah. Same thing about a Faded Picture, I would think. I don't know if you know that one, the lyric.
Yeah. Right.
A song I really like is Bad Side of Town.
Bad Side of Town, yeah, that's one of the later ones.
Your organ playing on that's really fucking cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
I like it. And what was
that was late in the group. That was not too far after that the group broke up. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. And
that
was
was the 70s.
And that was just you guys split up just because Sky's head got too big, or
not too big, but just too hard to control, and he got too much into his own religion thing and thinking he was involved in a cult and stuff, and and he became and I'm not saying anything's wrong with being a vegetarian. I respect that, fine, but I don't need somebody sitting down at the breakfast table and telling me if I eat an egg I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
And then it evolved worse, and he started feeling sorry for tomatoes.
Okay.
So he got crazy, in other words.
Yeah.
And he was too much to handle. And he started, his lyrics got mulled and didn't mean much sense. He was doing too many drugs, and his voice was getting worse, and he had about a range of 4 notes, and he just kind of back and forth. And if you listen to some of his later stuff he did by himself with other musicians, and sometimes the music's not bad, but I'm sorry he lost it later in life. And I'll blame it all on the drugs.
Right. Yeah, it's not. It ruins a lot of good people, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sure has.
And what was your connection with Kim Fowley?
Well, that was more of Sky's connection, and whatever. He was a good songwriter and stuff. I didn't know him very well personally at all. Just did recording sessions and stuff or whatever.
And what about like all the clothes you guys got back then? Did you get them at shops in LA, or like where did
it started with shops in LA that were really cool on Hollywood Boulevard and stuff back in the day, which was fun at the time, but then my personal stuff evolved, and I always liked the 1700s type of clothing, and I would design clothing off of that. And my mother lived in Michigan still at the time and was a great seamstress, and she sewed all her own dresses and made hats and did all kinds of stuff, but not for a living. She just liked to do it. So I would make a drawing and send it back to her and say, can you make me this coat or this shirt or whatever else? And she'd make it up. And then usually, like if there's a coat, like it's going to be a velvet coat or something, and she would make it up in a cheap and expensive material that is still used today to do that with. I think it's called muslin, and not to be miscued with the whatever. It's an inexpensive material. So she would make it up, sew it together, and and then send it out to me to California. I'd try it on and say, well, it needs a little here, a little there, take this out, do this, that. Send it back to her. The next shipment was my beautiful velvet coat. And she made a number of things for me that I designed, and so that's what my stuff was. Jan, being an American Indian, he usually had some flair in his clothing to represent being an Indian. Sky was kind of all over the block, but we were. It was fun dressing. We didn't, wasn't. Even to this day, I'm sorry, but the people that I see are just dressed like a band off the. It looks like the audience. I've got who's the band? I like to see them dressed in something. I don't necessarily say they should be a certain way. It can be as wild or as crazy or conservative or whatever they want to do, but look different than the audience.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. What about the song "Lose Your Mind"? You know that was influenced by.
See, that's another one. As far as the words, I couldn't tell you anything about. The song itself was another one that evolved from a jam, and we just started jamming stuff and whatever, and then condense it to a length that could be recordable and what we wanted to do with it type thing, But a lot of that stuff, like I said, it developed in the early days. I'm not sure about that one, but I think it was could have been Beatles, where we would experiment with a song that would get written the night before or maybe that night exactly. And we just start jamming it, and if the crowd liked it, hey, it might just evolve and get into something that was actually recordable.
Yeah, because I feel like you definitely carry the whole band, with your a lot of your intro organ chords and stuff.
Well, thank you, and I've had that told to me over and over, and yeah. But it was a group. I couldn't have done it without Sky and Jan and Rick, and they couldn't have done it without me. So it was a group.
Right.
But I was the foundation of the music, and
right.
I was a classically trained musician, and I knew how to put, it wasn't just go in and strum your instrument. There was was always a purpose to something, because I had some musical idea in my mind and I knew what I wanted, and then put it down and say, well, that sounds good, or it doesn't. You work through things. But.
Right. You would say the band always would follow your musical chords, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because you can tell by listening to all the songs.
Yeah.
And then I know Iggy Pop's like a huge fan of you guys. Did you ever meet or play with Iggy Pop and the Stooges? Or?
No. I didn't learn about him till actually later and stuff. And but I really like it. He's cool. And of course he's in our movie that came out, Pushing Too Hard movie.
Yeah.
And no, I'd actually like to have the band play with his show sometime. But whatever, it'd be fun.
Cool. So you're keeping the Seeds alive, and you said you guys play here and there.
Right.
Is there going to be any shows coming up?
I don't have anything on the books, so if someone's interested, give me a holler.
That's cool. Very cool. And what does Psych Garage mean to you?
What garage?
Psychedelic Garage.
Psychedelic Garage. Okay. Well, garage seems to have the term and bring up the older sound of what was created in our era, and I think we did have a large part to do with that. And obviously the psychedelic part, to me, is where the music goes kind of out there more. It's you've got the more the distortion or the wilder notes or the crazier sound of the music itself, the wilder side. So psychedelic to me is not usually pretty,
Right. So. Right. And what's next for you?
What's next?
Yeah.
At this age, and I'm basically semi-retired. I teach music. I've got a great place in Northern California and animals and hang out with my wife and whatever. And like to play with the guys, the great musicians that I have that are the Seeds. And Paul and Alec have another group called the Strangers, and they're doing some of that stuff. And like I said, I like to do a few jobs a year, but I'm willing to go anywhere if somebody's got the right deal. I like to do bigger shows. It's more fun. It's more exciting, and I meet more people, and that's really the enjoyment. Enjoyment is being on stage. That's exciting, and the other enjoyment is meeting the public that appreciates what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to do some more of that.
Yeah. Right on. And if you could say something to Sky right now, what would you say to him?
Thank you, brother, for creating what you did. Sorry what happened to you, and peace.
Yeah. Do you have any last words?
No, I hope to see everybody at the next show, wherever that may be.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Daryl.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay. Take care now. Cheers.
Bye-bye.